Klein.
For French-speaking countries, Louis De Funès is one of the most famous, if not the most famous, French actor of all times. And even though he isn't very well known in the English-speaking world, his comedy is really worth exploring. He did get a little bit of exposure in the United States in the 1974 movie The Mad Adventures of Rabbi Jacob, which was even nominated for a Golden Globe Award. But even so, most of his other movies were broadcast in many other countries, but not America. With that being said, he is France's favorite actor, having 163 movie credits on IMDb and having acted in over 100 stage plays over his entire career. What I mostly recall growing up with his movies is his grimaces and silly gigs. His performances had a true sense of burlesque. The art of gags and mimics is the true Louis De Funès signature. His acting style is remembered for its high-energy performance and his wide range of facial expressions and tics. He is in some way the true heir to the heroes of silent films, taking inspiration from Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, and even the talkies from Laurel and Hardy. A considerable part of De Funès' best-known acting was directed by Jean Girault, including his biggest franchise of Les Gendarmes. With that being said, since Louis De Funès has such an enormous library of movies, looking back at every film of his would make this video extremely long, so for this video I'm going to look back at the humble origins of Louis De Funès and present to you my 5 favorite films of his. I'll already apologize in advance if I don't mention your favorite film of his. Honestly, a vast majority of his movies are incredibly good, but hopefully discovering just a few of his movies will make you guys want to explore other films of his. So, without any further ado, who is Louis De Funès? Louis Germain David de Funès de Galarza was born on July 31, 1914 and died on January 27, 1983 in Courbevoie, Hauts-de-Seine to parents who hailed from Seville, Spain. Known to friends and intimates as Fufu, De Funès spoke French, Spanish, and English as well. During his youth, he was fond of drawing and playing the piano. As a youth and young adult, De Funès held menial jobs from which he was repeatedly fired. He became a bar pianist, working mostly as a jazz pianist in Pigalle, Paris, where he made his customers laugh each time he grimaced. In some ways, his acting career started when he studied for 1 year at the Simon Acting School, where he made some useful contacts, including Daniel Gélin, among others. Through the early 1940s, De Funès continued playing the piano in clubs, thinking there was not much call for a short, balding, skinny actor. His first wife, Germaine Louise Elodie Carroyer, and Daniel Gélin encouraged him until he managed to overcome his fear of rejection. He did remarry in 1943 to Jeanne Barthelémy de Maupassant and remained together with her for 40 years until De Funès' death in 1983. It was in 1945, thanks to his contact with Daniel Gélin, that De Funès made his film debut at the age of 31 with a bit part in Jean Stelly's La Tentation de Barbizon. He appears on screen for less than 40 seconds in the role of the porter of the cabaret Le Paradis, welcoming the character played by Jérôme Chambon in the entrance hall and pointing him to the double doors leading to the main room. From 1945 to 1955, he appeared in 50 films, usually as an extra or walk-on. A break came in 1956 when he appeared as the black market pork butcher Jambier, which was another small role in Claude Autant-Lara's well-known World War II comedy La Traversée de Paris, which led to a smaller initial stardom in 1963 with Jean Girault's film Pouic-Pouic, and then a real big break when he acted in Le Gendarme de Saint-Tropez. After their first successful collaboration, director Jean Girault perceived De Funès as the ideal actor to play the part of the scheming and opportunistic gendarme. What's amazing to me about this role is that the actor was 49 years old at the time, and before that he really wasn't known, so most of his starring filmography really happened in the last 20 years of his life. Since I did mention that this is my top 5 Louis De Funès films and I just spoke about Le Gendarme de Saint-Tropez, let's explore this movie, which actually spawned 6 sequels and is his most celebrated role. The lead character of Ludovic Cruchot, portrayed by Louis De Funès, was imagined by Richard Balducci after having a nonsensical argument with a gendarme that was stationed in Saint-Tropez. The main difference between a gendarme and a police officer is that a gendarme has an office located inside barracks and often operates more in rural areas and suburbs, whereas a police officer works from a police station and is more often found in cities. As for the Gendarme movies, they follow Ludovic Cruchot, a highly uptight gendarme in a small French village who has been reassigned to the seaside commune of Saint-Tropez under the orders of command Sergeant Major Germain, who takes no lip from his outspoken new subordinate. In addition, his daughter Nicole quickly adapts to the life in the city and, much to Cruchot's traditional-minded chagrin, begins to mix with the local carefree youths who often blatantly defy her father's official authority. Soon the gendarmes find themselves confronted with a major problem: a group of persistent nudists, and any attempts to arrest them in flagrant delicto is foiled by a lookout. But after several failures, Cruchot manages to hatch a master plan and succeeds in getting all the nude swimmers arrested. After Cruchot discovers that his daughter and her boyfriend have stolen and crashed an expensive Mustang sports car into a ditch, unbeknownst to any of them, the car actually belongs to a gang of robbers who have stolen a Rembrandt painting, which is still in the trunk. This causes more problems and crazy situation. This initial Gendarme movie was so popular that 5 sequels followed throughout the years, following the adventures of the gendarme in New York, Cruchot's wedding, early retirement, aliens impersonating the gendarme, and even a final movie featuring female gendarme. As you can see, the whole franchise presented some pretty interesting storylines and sometimes even really bizarre stories, such as when aliens come to Earth. Watching that particular sequel was somewhat really scary as a child, but I still love it to this day. Having had so much success with this initial movie, it was inevitable that Louis De Funès would act in other big movies. The second movie that I would like to speak about is Phantasm, which was released in 1964 and spawned 2 more sequels. Phantasm was actually France's answer to the James Bond phenomenon that swept the world at around the same time and is based on the original Phantasm novels. For this interpretation of the novels, Commissaire Juve, as played by Louis De Funès, becomes a comedic character, much unlike his literary counterpart. Phantasm's role is taken on by Jean Marais as the arch-villain, whereas Louis De Funès is the earnest but outclassed commissaire Paul Juve. In the film, Juve teams up with journalist Fandor, also played by Marais, trying to catch Phantasm but never quite succeeding. Phantasm became extremely successful in Europe, the Soviet Union, and Japan. The character of Phantasm is a man of many disguises. He uses makeup as a weapon and can impersonate anyone using an array of masks, creating endless confusion by constantly changing his appearance. In the first episode of the series, he isn't happy with Fandor because of a fictitious interview the journalist wrote about him. He takes his revenge by abducting Fandor and threatening to kill him. He then uses his formidable makeup skills to commit a spectacular crime while disguised like Fandor. When Commissaire Juve joins the chase, chameleon-like Phantasm promptly commits a crime wearing a mask looking like Juve. In the end, Fandor, Juve, and Fandor's girlfriend Hélène are all on the master criminal's trail, all to no avail as the man of 1,000 masks finally manages to escape. In 1965, Phantasme de Chaîne was released, followed by a third sequel, Phantasme contre Scotland Yard. The first Phantasme film was the 5th most popular movie at the French box office in 1964. In some ways, it's amazing that both Phantasm and the Gendarme became franchises. Even though in today's modern age, franchises are really a dime a dozen, we have to realize that these movies were made in the 60s, where making sequels was a new thing. And what's more amazing is that the sequels really have thorough stories and aren't just cash grabs trying to squeeze a few bucks from a known IP. The third movie from De Funès' career that I want to speak about is Ibernatus, which was directed by Édouard Molinaro, who later directed another popular French film called La Cage aux Folles, which was readapted for the American audience in the form of a remake starring Robin Williams called The Birdcage. As for Ibernatus, it tells the story of a man frozen for 65 years who is found in the ice of the North Pole by a scientific polar expedition. While he is brought back to life by Professor Edouard Loribat, the man is identified as Paul Fournier, who was exploring the pole in 1905 and is now, thanks to hibernation, a 90-year-old man who looks young. Edmée de Tartas, born Fournier, is identified as the granddaughter of Paul and convinces her husband Hubert Barrère de Tartas, played by Louis De Funès, that Paul must be given back to his family, while the government wishes to treat Paul as a research subject. After a kidnapping and a pursuit, the authorities reluctantly agree, but impose for the sake of Paul's mental health that his environment be the same as in 1905. As Paul thinks Edmée is his mother, Hubert must play the role of a man courting Edmée, and Didier played by Olivier de Funès, which is the real-life son of Louis de Funès. The son of Edmée and Hubert play the role of a student living with a family. First under control, the situation gradually deteriorates, especially when Paul's actions become a threat to Hubert's plan to marry his son to the daughter of Crépin Jaujard, one of his business partners. Even though this isn't really a time travel movie, the fact that they went to great lengths to make it seem as if all the surroundings from the 1960s looked like if it was 1905 almost make it feel like a time travel movie. And being a big Back to the Future fan, this was really the kind of film that I really enjoyed as a young kid and actually up to this day. The fourth movie that I'd like to speak about is L'aile ou la cuisse, which is named The Wing or the Thigh in English and was released in 1976. This comedy has to be spoken about because, first of all, it's an amazing film, but also because back in March 1975, De Funès was hospitalized for having a double infarction and forced to take a rest from acting. Due to his heart problems, doctors were very skeptical for his return to the stressful long hours and work required to act in a movie. De Funès, being so passionate about his art, went back to filming as soon as he felt okay to do so. Because of that, production had doctors on set making sure that he wouldn't exert himself. Another interesting note about this movie is that, while his co-star was Coluche, that was the #1 rising comedian at the time, known for being extremely sarcastic and also speaking about liberty of expression and politics. Coluche did die at a young age in 1986 following a motorcycle accident. On a less sad note, something that is also extremely interesting about this film is that even though it is a comedy, it is very political as it deals with the rising subject of the decline of food quality through industrialization that was just starting in France in the 1970s. As for the actual story of the film, it follows Charles Duchemin, played by Louis De Funès, who is the editor of an internationally known restaurant guide for which he still personally performs numerous restaurant tests using an assortment of elaborate disguises to escape detection by the restaurant owners. After being appointed to the Académie Française, Duchemin decides to retire as a restaurant critic and trains his son Gérard, played by Coluche, to continue the family business. However, unbeknownst to Charles, Gérard is more interested in his true passion, working as a clown in a small circus which he has co-founded and supports financially. After an accident where Charles is confronted by the manager of a restaurant that he criticized and is forced at gunpoint to eat all the leftovers in the kitchen, Charles becomes ill and loses his tasting abilities. Even though Gérard doesn't want to take over his father's business, he still decides to help him by being a taster for his father in the hopes to hide his father's disability from the media, and most importantly hide this information from Jacques Tricatel, who is the owner of a company of mass-produced food who is trying to take over a large number of quality restaurants which had been awarded stars by Duchemin. The fifth movie that I want to speak about is the 1981 film La Soupe aux Choux, or The Cabbage Soup in English. This movie is an adaptation of a book written by René Fallet, published in January 1980. Even though this movie is one of my favorites of De Funès, its success was pretty moderate upon its release, with critics saying pretty negative things about it, but over time, La Soupe aux Choux became a cult classic and favorite amongst fans. The story revolves around Claude Ratignier, played by Louis De Funès, known as Le Claude, who is an old man living on a small farm across the road from his longtime friend Francis Chéras, known as Le Bombay. The two are described as the last surviving members of their breed, still living in a rural fashion while the rest of the world has modernized. They spend their days getting drunk and eating cabbage soup while they spend their nights getting drunk and farting. One night, their farting summons an alien from the planet Oxo while Le Bombay is asleep. Le Claude is awake to welcome the alien and communicates with the alien through rough sign language and then sends him off with a canister full of cabbage soup. The alien returns several times because of the cabbage soup that he was given. On the second meeting, the alien has learned French, and we are told that on his planet they live to 200, no more, no less. But trouble brews when the alien arranges to have Le Claude's late wife resurrected at the age of 20. Because of the effect of the delicious cabbage soup on Oxo, the alien offers Le Claude, Le Bombay, and their cat residence on Oxo so that they could grow their cabbage and make cabbage soup. This would allow them all to live to the age of 200. Claude initially rejects the proposition outright, but seeing that the world is changing so much, plus his resurrected wife going to relive her life as a 20-year-old, they decide to accept the proposition. De Funès made his final film, Gendarme et Gendarmettes, in 1982. Unlike the characters he played in his movies, De Funès was said to be a very shy person in real life. Capable of an extremely rich and rapidly changing range of facial expressions, De Funès was nicknamed the man with 40 faces per minute. In his later years, suffering from a worsening heart condition and having had a heart attack caused by straining himself too much with his stage antics, he died of a heart attack on January 27, 1983, a few months after making his final film. As mentioned, Louis De Funès has 163 credits, and probably even more which aren't even listed on IMDb. Many more of his films apart from my top 5 are amazing and really deserve being explored. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Please be sure to subscribe and hit the like button. Please let me know what your favorite Louis De Funès film is, and if you haven't seen any of his films yet, do yourself a favor and go watch one of his as soon as possible. You might be surprised at how good they are. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next video.